Oh, there we are. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Tanya Freedman, the Chief Operating Officer of Kinetics, coming to you from sunny California. And next to me is Carl Shusterman.
Hello.
Who is top attorney of law. And we are coming to you from sunny California. We are doing a series of Facebook Live sessions targeted mainly at nurses and how immigration is being affected by, or how nurses, I should say, are being affected by immigration law at the moment. And before we get started, I wanted to just give a little update on who we are and why we're doing this, and then a bio on Carl, who has a very impressive background, and I will share that with everybody. Today's Facebook Live session will be half an hour, just to let everybody know. And we will be sharing this, the information that we posted last week, or to say just over a week ago, because I think there were some technical issues with that posting. Okay, so let's get started. So again, my name is Tanya Freedman. Oh, I see we have our first person watching, Ernie Mania. Hi, Ernie. My name is Tanya Freedman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kinetics. We are a recruitment company. We have been working for many years in nurse recruitment and have successfully brought many nurses to the US. We are what I like to call career matchmakers. So you've heard of Match.com and Filipino Cupid, other kinds of Facebook Lives or other kind of match forums. And we basically have clients all over the US, both direct hire in acute care hospitals, staffing companies, and as well as correctionals that we work with. I, as you might hear, have an accent. I was I see we have Beer Cabs is watching now, Cherry Ogie. So we're having people, Milanus is coming online watching. Welcome everybody to our session. I have been in recruitment for over 30 years, so many years of experience. And we have helped thousands of nurses come to the US over the many years. I was an immigrant myself, and that's the reason why I wanted to do these Facebook Live sessions, because we want to make sure that we can help people pay it forward for coming to the US. It really is a difficult transition. Carl has been doing this for many years, and it really can be a very difficult transition. So it's really a passion of mine to pay it forward and share information. Every day I get calls from hospitals, from nurses, still wanting to come to America, wanting to make that American dream a reality. And there is a nursing shortage at the moment in the US. Last time I drew up some stats. I'm going to actually still read you a few stats. There was an article a few weeks ago about Robert Rossiter, who is the spokesman for the American Association College of Nursing. He said that the nursing shortage at the moment is really a catch-22 situation. There's a tremendous demand from hospitals, long-term care facilities, and clinics to hire more nurses. But the nursing schools are tapped out. There's currently about 3 million nurses in the United States. However, the country will need to produce more than 1 million new registered nurses by 2022 to fulfill their healthcare needs, according to the American Nurses Association estimate. So that's where there really is a problem. It's not like in any way that the international nurses are going to be taking American jobs. This is really just another strategy for healthcare organizations another tool in their toolbox really, to supplement their American recruitment. So we have a lot of people watching. I see iCard, Matthew, Alexa, Maria, Khan, Salman. So I see a lot of people coming in, and hopefully this time we won't have any technical issues. As I said, just to remind everybody, we will be going over the questions that we had last time. But firstly, I want to just introduce Carl Shusterman.
Thank you.
Who has a very impressive bio. So I'm going to read some of his many accolades and share those with you. Attorney Carl Shusterman has over 40 years of practicing immigration law. So I guess between the two of us, we have almost 70 years of experience.
I think we're old, Tanya.
Yeah, we're getting old. We're getting old, Carl. He served as a trial attorney for the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS, from the 1976 until 1982, when he entered private practice. He's one of the limited number of attorneys who have been designated as certified specialists in immigration and naturalized law by the California State Bar. More than 10 years, he's been voted as one of the best lawyers in America and as a super lawyer by his colleagues at the bar. Pretty impressive. Carl was featured in the February 2018 issue of Super Lawyers magazine. He has been named as one of the top 15 corporate immigration lawyers in the U.S. by Human Resources Executive magazine. His hard work and dedication to immigration law has earned him the highest rating in legal ability and ethics from prestigious Martindale-Hubbell legal directory. He served as a member of the Immigration and Nationality Law Advisory. He's been listed in the who's who of corporate immigration lawyers. The list goes on, Carl. We have a very impressive top lawyer in our midst, and we're very excited to be able to share your wisdom and your knowledge with everybody, and I know everybody has a lot of questions.
And we should mention, you probably know more about me than you really want to know, but my wife is Filipino, and for the last 30 years, we have been bringing over her nieces and nephews to the U.S. as nurses. And probably altogether, we've brought over 10,000 nurses to the U.S.
So Carl is the man, everybody. He knows his stuff. And we're going to get going with the number of questions. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing a series of Facebook Live sessions. This is the second one, but today's live session is a repeat of our first one because we did have some people that had technical issues. So we want to make sure that everybody gets all of the information. Because the one thing that I've learned doing this kind of work for many, many years is that there was the retrogression years. In 2008, the U.S. had a retrogression. After that was the Great Recession. So there have been many years of long delays for nurses and obviously other occupations, but for nurses specifically getting into the U.S. These days, there have also been a lot of changes from the USCIS perspective. So Carl will be able to share a lot of his insights with us, and I think we're going to learn a lot in terms of his insights and how he can answer our questions. Let's get my story straight. Okay. So these are some of the questions that were raised by some of the nurses that we work with. Can you give us a brief overview of the different types of visas for registered nurses?
Okay. So when I started out, there was something called an H-1 visa that nurses could get. It's limited for for many years now. They call them H-1B visas. H-1B visas are only for people who have whose jobs require at least a bachelor's degree in what they do. So since American healthcare providers usually will hire Americans with 2-year degrees for nursing jobs, even if you have a bachelor's degree in your country, you can't get an H-1B for doing those same type of jobs that a 2-year nursing degree will handle. However, we have got H-1Bs for advanced care nurses, and those may be nurse practitioners. They may be CRNAs, which are certified registered nurse anesthetists, and also some nurse managers.
Okay. Because I think, in my experience, one of the questions that we often get is, can we do an H-1 visa for a regular staff nurse?
Right. And the answer is usually no. Some people have managed to squeak them in, but things are getting much harder these days, so I wouldn't even attempt to do that. I should mention, a lot of you probably know that those of you who do qualify for an H-1B, that there's a lottery every year because the numbers for H-1Bs for most employers are fixed at 85,000 a year, and they get over double that as far as the number of petitions that they file. But there are certain employers that are not under that, and they can apply for nurses all year long, and they don't go into any kind of lottery. I'll just name there. You can watch our H-1B video online and see this in more detail, but I'll mention those 5 types of employers quickly. One is anybody who works at a university is not subject to the 85,000 cap. Also, nonprofit institutions that are either related to or affiliated with a university are not subject. And also nonprofit organizations, nonprofit research organizations, and government research organizations. None of those 5 types of employers have to go through the H-1B lottery, so they can apply for H-1Bs for nurses, physical therapists, whatever the particular professional job is, all through the year.
Okay. So it seems like there are some instances where the H1 would be applicable, but for the regular staff nurse, it's really not going to be an option, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Now, there is another type of visa that some people are going to qualify for and others are not. It's called the TN visa. TN stands for Trade NAFTA, and the NAFTA agreement is the North American Free Trade Agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And over the last 10 years, as you've mentioned, it's been difficult for nurses to come to the U.S. So I know a lot of nurses from Philippines, India, Jamaica, all over the world who've gone to Canada as like their second choice. But it's been so many years that they're now Canadian citizens. Yeah. So if you're a nurse and you're licensed in Canada and you're a Canadian citizen, I mean, once you meet the requirements, Tanya's able to find a job for you, and we're able to get you a TN visa all in a matter of weeks. So much faster than getting green cards, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes.
Okay. So essentially, if we just sum up, there are basically 2 different visas that most nurses will come through on. It's either going to be a green card or it's going to be a TN visa, correct?
That's exactly right.
So for those nurses that are going to come on the TN visa, from what I'm understanding you're saying, they have to be a Canadian citizen.
Canadian or Mexican, but
yes. Yeah, okay. So, and in my experience, we've been doing this for many, many years, and we've brought thousands of Canadian nurses through to the US. In that time, we have had some Mexican nurses, and their process, from what I understand, is a little different in that they have to go to like the embassy, so it's a little different from a TN perspective. But for the purposes of today, I think it's probably best for us to focus more on the Canadian side rather than Mexican, because they just are, they're going to be way more nurses coming from Canada on the TN visa.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So can you talk us through a little bit? One of the questions we had is the differences between the green card and the TN visa.
Okay. So, and technically from Canada, the people who are coming here on temporary work visas, it's not even a visa. Once you get the employer files for you and you get your petition approved, you come over the border. You don't have to go to the U.S. embassy or consulate and get a visa the way you have to do for every other country. Okay. So it's even easier than a visa. But that permits you to stay in the U.S. for a period of 3 years. And then, of course, as long as you have a job, your employer can keep renewing that for 3 years at a time. And if you want to switch to another area of the country or to another employer, you can do that. But you have to kind of dance with the one who brung you. So, if Hospital A sponsors you for a TN, and then maybe you get a better offer in a year from Hospital B, you can't just start working there the next Monday. They also have to sponsor you for the TN. Okay. Now, the green card is permanent residence. So once you get the green card, you can stay forever in the U.S. It's your choice whether or not to become a U.S. citizen. So you can stay on a green card forever, or you can become a U.S. citizen. A TN, there's no specific limit on how many years, But I usually advise the TNs, if you're going to keep renewing it, eventually they'll deny it. So become a permanent resident if you like the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see we have a question from Salia Sami, who's asking, how about Africa? So what I would assume then is that somebody coming from Africa the only choice that they would have would be to be on a green card, because they don't qualify for the TN visa, right?
If you're coming directly from an African country or an Asian country or really anywhere else in the world except Canada or Mexico, you have to come for the green card. Now, of course, you have the same option as anyone else to immigrate to Canada, to become a Canadian citizen. And if you do that, you can get a TN. But most of the nurses we've handled from Nigeria or Ghana and so on, we brought them directly on green cards.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit more about the difference in timeline, like with a TN visa as opposed to a green card?
Right. So, I mean, a TN visa, it may take you a few months to get that because there's certain requirements for a green card or a TN or an H-1B, no matter how you want to get a visa to come to the U.S. If you're a nurse, you must have something called the visa screen, where you show your education to an American company called CGFNS. It's the Commission on Graduates of Foreign Nursing Schools. And you also take an English exam. And when they certify that your education abroad is equivalent to that of a nurse in the United States, then they'll okay that. And you'll also need to pass the English test, and then you'll get this visa screen certificate.
Okay. So just to clarify though, for some people, if you were trained in English, you do not have to take the English exam. At Kinetics, we have a licensing team that help our nurses that we place specifically through this process, because we know that it can be a little bit confusing and overwhelming. You know, often you would get a job and you don't know where to start. How does the TN work? How does the visa screen work? How does the IELTS, do I need the IELTS? Don't I need the IELTS? Should I take the IELTS, the TOEFL? There's so many questions that go through your mind at that point. So as Carl said, when you come through on the TN visa, you are going to need the visa screen certificate. And there are certain criteria, but we need to look at that on a case-by-case basis of exactly what would need to be required by each nurse. Because sometimes they don't need the English.
Right. And we do have, as I said, my wife's from the Philippines, and she calls herself the web widow, because for the last 20-something years, I have been adding page after page to our website. So we do have videos, and we have pages describing how to get licensed, how to get a visa screen, and links to the actual pages where you can apply.
Okay. In terms of the timing of getting the TN visa and the green card,
so the TN, if you have a license and you have a visa screen, I mean, we can literally get you a TN in a matter of weeks. Okay, it's very, very quick. To get a green card really depends on your country of birth. So the countries that have the backlogs are China, India, and the Philippines. China and India, huge backlogs, many years. The Philippine backlog is a little, I would say it will take you between 18 and 24 months if you're born in the Philippines to get a green card, if you're coming from out of the country. If you're in the U.S. on a TN and you apply for the green card, there'll be an extra year added on, because now all nurses and other employment-related green cards require an interview with the Immigration Service, and we're seeing a lot of complications in this administration. So I urge any nurse who's trying to get a green card to have an attorney who's specialized in getting nurses green cards, and probably you want to have an attorney sitting with you at the interview, because a lot of things are going on now that have not gone on in the 40 years that I've been practicing. The Trump administration is getting tougher on immigration than anything in the past. Let me go to the backlog countries, though. I mean, India right now, frankly, it's kind of a disaster. It probably take decades for somebody to get a green card through a job in India. They're in the employment-based third category, which is for professional, skilled, and unskilled workers.
Okay, but we did have a little bit of movement.
We did.
Today with the latest, we've got to celebrate the victories, Carl.
Okay. Well, I mean, yes, we have to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
So with the Philippine nurses, if you would have applied 3 or 4 years ago, the waiting time was between 6 and 8 years. Now it came down to about 18 months. And the last couple of months have sort of gone up to 19 or 20 months.
It's kind of been holding for a few months.
It's a bit of a holding pattern.
But it has been coming down. And in fact, we're seeing a lot more activity from the Philippines. So there are a lot of people now that we've seen who are writing the NCLEX that hadn't written it before. We have many, many nurses who had applications before the retrogression. That had previous priority dates. So we might want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Is if you have had a previous priority date, so if you were sponsored before the retrogression and had an approved I-140, that would also mean that the processing time for the green card would be a little shorter, correct?
That is exactly correct. So inside immigration, we call it recapturing the priority date. So let's say somebody applied for you, an employer applied for you in 2011, but you never immigrated to the United States, and that job fell apart, and now somebody's applying for you in 2018. Well, you don't have a waiting time, because you can use, when the new employer files a new petition for you, they can ask for that old place in line, which we call the priority date. And you can apply, if you're in the U.S., you can apply for the green card, which we call adjustment of status, simultaneously at the same time. So that's really good. And I might mention, even though the Indian dates are kind of a disaster, they've moved up considerably in the July
There has been movement.
bulletin.
So we've got to hold on to the positives.
Exactly.
There has been movement. I always think of the priority date. Somebody once told me this analogy, and I thought it was a really good one, that it's kind of like standing in a deli. You know, like in an American deli where you take a number and then you're standing in line. So what happened is that at the retrogression years, people took a number, they were standing in line, and the deli got closed. So they couldn't get their food yet. They couldn't move ahead yet.
Okay.
But then now the deli's open again. So again, they can stand. They don't have to go to the back of the line. They now can still have a place further in the front.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. So a nice analogy to explain it, because it can be very confusing. For a lot of people, it's hard to know how the I-140 and the previous priority date work. One thing to mention on that is that we have a lot of candidates that have had previous priority dates where they don't actually have a copy of their I-140s. In that case, there is the opportunity to do what we call like a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, that's correct.
You want to maybe explain a little bit about that?
So again, as usual, I won't keep saying this, but we have a web page about it, and we have a video about it. And if you can't find it, I realize our web page is huge. We have an internal Google search engine. So if you type FOIA, you'll go right to that page in the video. And if you don't have a copy of the I-140, or let's say you just want to see a history of your immigration case, we can go to the Immigration Service and ask for a copy of that. And that can be very helpful. Particularly, I want to mention that there are nurses who, for one reason or another, have fallen out of legal status in the U.S., but they may have an early priority date and still be able to adjust their status in the U.S., but they have to get the file to be able to prove that. And if they ask for the file and put their address on there, with this administration, they could come out to your house and pick you up. So what you want to have is your lawyer puts in this, and the lawyer does not put your address, they put the lawyer's address. And we've probably done this several thousand times, and it's really helped a lot of people.
And from our side, from the Kinetic side, we do this every day. We have a team of people who are very experienced to help you to fill out the forms. And the thing that I would also always say when you're completing a FOIA application, it's very important to go through all of your old files and make sure that you get all the information. So, sometimes there can just be an email saying, the date that your approval came through, or the name of the lawyer, the name of the employer. Any kind of information that you have when you're filling in a FOIA is very, very important and helpful, because obviously there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to find that original I-140 form.
Right, and you have to realize that the I-140, the petition, is really something the employer files and the employer gets an answer. So you as the employee, if your employer who had filed for you years ago just doesn't want to share that with you, you would be out of luck. Except for the Freedom of Information Act, you can get all the documents the employer doesn't want to give you by getting the file directly from the Immigration Service. And particularly, there's sometimes where things happen in the past and immigration law is complicated, and the nurse said, oh, they made me leave the U.S. or something like that. And of course, somebody like me is going to say, well, when you say leave, were you deported, or did the judge give you voluntary departure? Because that has far different consequences. And there's a lot of other issues too. So if we get your file, what it is like if you're playing poker and before you bet, you can see the other guy's cards.
Oh, okay.
Then you know whether to bet a lot of money.
You know where you stand.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we love doing those FOIA files. Yes.
Okay. All right. I think the hard thing, though, for a lot of people who did have previous petitions, is that because of the retrogression years and then the recession right after that, and obviously no one was going to be looking at any immigration, for nurses when there were so many Americans out of work, that a lot of the companies that filed those I-140s went out of business.
That's true.
So from our side, from Kinetic side, the reason why we didn't go out of business is because we have a lot of Canadians that we were placing in the years after the retrogression years. So, that's why we have so much experience with the Canadian recruitment.
Right.
I see there's a question coming up from Kelly about the dual intent, like if you are on a TN visa and you decide that you want to stay here and you want to be permanent, have permanent residency in the US. How does dual intent work?
Okay,
Carl?
I'm going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this will have to be the last question because we're kind of at
Are we
the end
out of time already?
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
We're already at the half
Time flies
hour.
when you're having fun, Carl.
But just so you know, this is not the one and only time. Tanya and I are going to do several of these. So just check our web pages to see what the dates are going to be in the future. We haven't listed them yet, but we will be listing them. Also, we have a newsletter that's been coming out once a month for the last 23 years. So we do list the dates of all the future Facebook Lives on one of the topics on our newsletter. But very good question to close out with. So if you're on a TN visa, you have to understand that a TN visa, you're telling them, I'm going back to Canada when this job's over, or I'm going back to Mexico. I have no intention
because it's not permanent, right?
Right. If you say, oh, well, I'm going to get married next year to my boyfriend who's a U.S. citizen, they're not going to let you in on a TN because you have to have that intent to go back to Canada. However, there's an exception, and we have the memos on the page where immigration says, as long as on the present trip to the U.S., you're not going to stay permanently, we will let you in even though you have a priority date for a green card.
Okay.
So if you come in on a TN and the hospital or the senior living facility or whatever your employer is has applied for a green card for you, you can still get another TN and come back to the United States, but you must leave and go back to Canada and apply for the green card.
You must leave and go back to Canada and apply for the green card?
Right, true.
So you can't apply for the green card?
Well, okay. It is more complicated. There's something called the 90-day rule.
Okay.
But I I think we probably should wait till next time because I could really
Okay,
talk for a
okay.
long time about that.
Okay. All right. So that will be a good place for us to start on our next session.
You got it.
So for those of you who didn't get your questions answered, please don't panic. We will be going through all the questions after this Facebook Live session and responding to your queries. And please keep sending us questions because we've got a lot of questions from many of you that you want answered, that you want Carl to answer in terms of your specific cases or just general questions about immigration, whether it's on the, the green card side, the TN side, the licensing side. We really need to take advantage of having this expert in our midst. And being able to tap his brain and get all the answers that we need. So for everybody just to know, we will be doing additional Facebook Live sessions. Please check out Carl's website, as he said. Subscribe to his newsletter. Please check out the Facebook reviews of Kinetics, because I think it's really important just to see how we look after our nurses. This is just one way that we look after our nurses as well as many other nurses, because we want to pay it forward. We want to make sure that everybody has the right information. I'm very passionate about that. We want to make sure that we share this information and clear up a lot of the confusion and rumors and misinformation that exist for nurses in the immigration realm.
Right. I should probably mention, because we do have fairly expensive consultations, but because nurse cases we specialize in, and because most nurse cases are pretty straightforward, Elsa Garcia, who is our senior paralegal for our RN group, is doing free consultations right now. So take a look at our nurse page and you'll see how to make a free consultation with Elsa.
So that is huge. The fact that you're prepared to give free consultations is very appreciated, I'm sure, by many, many people. If you're interested in jobs in terms of the US, we work with hospitals, long-term care, correctional facilities, staffing companies in all 50 states. So we have lots and lots of opportunities. We are what I always like to call your career matchmakers. So please make sure, if you are interested in any opportunities, to email us your resume. That's the best way to start. People are always asking me, how do we get started with coming to the US? From our side, the best way is to send us your resume, and what we do is we will have a personal conversation with you. We ask a lot of questions so that we can make sure that we can help you to the best of our ability in terms of the immigration or the licensing requirements for coming to the US. So on that note, thank you everybody for all the questions. It was fun to do our second session together, and we look forward to many more. Carl and I are going to try and do different topics. So I think our next topic is going to be more specifically focused on the TN visa.
Okay.
He'll be speaking a little bit more about the dual intent and how that works. As well as many other questions that we've had from nurses on the TN visa and what to expect and how to prepare yourself for that. After the TN visa, we're going to be talking about licensing issues, and we have a whole series of topics that we're going to be covering over the next few weeks. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to sharing more information for you in the future.
And if you have friends who were not able to see the video today, this and all future videos we will post on our YouTube page. We're coming up on 2 million views, Tanya. So,
oh wow!
So we're happy to have that as a resource. A lot of people have immigrated to the U.S. By watching our videos. Some are our clients and some are not, but we're happy to give that free information.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I see all the thank yous are coming through. So thank you, Carl, for your time.
Thank you, Tanya.
And until the next one.
That sounds good. See you.